Camino Communications. It's a very common concern, particularly for new pilgrims. How does it all work? That's what we're going to be talking about this week, coming right up. Okay, so what do I mean by Camino Communications? People are frequently asking online about the topic of communications. Usually, how do I get my mobile phone working while I'm walking the Camino and so on. But there's a few other elements of communications that I'd just like to mention, which hopefully will be useful for you. And then I'll explain right at the end how I manage communications when I'm walking a Camino. Excuse me. Okay, so generally people are asking, how do I best use my mobile phone? Now the purists amongst us would say you don't need a mobile phone, you shouldn't be on a mobile phone and listening to music and all that kind of stuff while you're walking a Camino, you should be meditating and all the rest of it. I get that, and to a certain degree I would agree with that. But I think there is a serious side to communications when you're on Camino that we do need to consider. So, one aspect, of course, that comes to mind is just wanting to be in touch with those back home. So what's the best way of accessing your mobile phone while you're in Spain, for example? Let's say you're going to walk the Camino Francis. There's a couple of things you can do. I know a lot of people coming from the US just use their normal cell mobile plan and turn on roaming, and I think some of the carriers in the US have particularly good plans so that you're not going to have to take out a second mortgage to pay the costs while you're using your phone in Spain. That would be fairly unusual, I think, and please don't sort of take that as advice on what to do. Do check with your cell phone carriers. My experience generally is that you want to get a local SIM card. And SIM cards now in Europe are generally available that work Europe-wide. So if you're going elsewhere after your Camino or prior to your Camino, you'll be able to use that SIM card in most countries in Europe. A few years ago, you'd have to pay a premium in certain countries and things, but I think now it's a fairly flat rate. So what I do when I get to Spain, I just get a local SIM card, and there's a whole bunch to look at. They do vary, there's Vodafone, I think Movistar is a very common one. That's probably the one I might use next time. And I just pick up a SIM card when I get there. Of course, now we're in the era of eSIMs, and you could actually, if your phone caters for eSIMs, you might be able to get one of those before you even go, which is probably what I'll do. And this is quite a new phone. This one is a dual SIM capability as well, so I might keep my Australian SIM card and just drop in a Spanish one. But I digress. The easiest way to get your phone operating in Spain is just to get a Spanish SIM card. And of course that's going to give you internet access as well. Why do I want to have phone access? Look, I do like to be unplugged while I'm walking a Camino, but I want the ability to call home. So I generally walk on my own. Wife and family are at home, so I do just have a quick chat with them once a day, usually in the early evenings, depending on time zones and stuff. And we'll have a chat on WhatsApp or Skype or Facebook or something like that. So I'm using the internet to have a chat. While we're talking about the internet, you will find on the most populous Caminos fairly good access to Wi-Fi. On some of the more remote Caminos, not so much, of course, and then you'll have to rely on your SIM card. So I use all kinds of online apps for general communication. The other thing that I use my phone for in terms of communication is just calling ahead for accommodation. So very often I might be booking accommodation. I book 1 or 2 days ahead. I might be doing that online. And then I might just call them to confirm. And very often, I'm a very slow walker, so I'm generally arriving mid to late afternoon, wherever I'm staying. And quite often I'll just call them to say, I'm delayed or something like that. But it's just courtesy, and a lot of places will say, look, if you don't arrive by 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, we can't keep your room. And so I'll call them. And I'm not a Spanish speaker. I speak a tiny bit, but I've learnt phrases like, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little bit late. I'll be there by 6. I'll be there by 7. It's just a courtesy. Sorry, this phone's beeping. I've left it on for a reason. I want to show you something. So that's kind of phone and internet access. So for keeping in touch, calling accommodation. One of the other elements that I use internet for is checking in on apps. So I've used hard copy guidebooks and maps in the past. This time I'm going to be using a Camino app as my guidebook, so looking ahead for accommodation and using the maps and so on. So that's another reason to have internet. But I think one of the main reasons for carrying a phone and keeping in contact is in case of emergency. And it's quite, I think I've told this story before, it's quite amusing. On our last Camino, Pat, my wife, decided that she wanted to walk from Saint-Jean to Santiago with me. So she'd done a shorter Camino before, but she wanted to do a much longer one, so the 800 Ks. And she said, but you've got to learn some more Spanish, and you've got to be able to call an ambulance, and you've got to be able to call the police. So I had to learn all these different phrases and things. And that's another reason that I want to have phone access. Not necessarily just for me, but what if I came across a pilgrim who just had a heart attack or broken a leg or something like that? You need to be able to call the emergency services. So I think that's another really good reason to carry a phone. And so how do you actually, what forms of communication are there open to you? Well, the international emergency number in Europe is 112. So, what is it? I'm not sure what it is in the States. Is it 911 or something like that? In the UK, it's 999. Here in Australia, it's 000. But in Europe, it's 112. So, that's your emergency number if you need to call the cops or ambulance or something like that. And I think generally you'll find somebody at the other end who can speak English if you're an English speaker. Obviously, they're going to speak Spanish, but probably a few other languages as well. So 112 is probably your first port of call for an emergency number. And then the other thing that I want to show you is an app which I've only recently become aware of, but I have loaded up and I will be having this on my next Camino, and it's called Alert Cops. So it's put out by the Spanish police. There's Alert Cops. And I would say it's well worth having that. Do look at it online and have a look at the functionality and so on. But let me just go through here. You can report thefts, if there's been a fight, a sexual assault, all sorts of things. You're lost, you're missing, and it has the ability to not only contact the police but to send them your location. So that, I reckon, is going to be my first port of call in case of emergencies next time out. So Alert Cops is the app, and of course you can get that for iPhone as well as Android. One other form of communication that I'll mention, which is used quite a lot on the Camino and in Spain, is WhatsApp. So again, another useful reason to have internet with you. WhatsApp, the last few times I've walked to Camino, WhatsApp was used quite a lot between pilgrims. So, as you sort of meet people and keep in touch and so on. And of course, it allows you to communicate via the internet using your existing phone number. So WhatsApp is really good. You can also use WhatsApp for accommodation. It's quite widely used in Spain. You could call emergency services, I think, on WhatsApp, 112. And the benefit of that is it has the ability for you to send them your location. I just checked this, I didn't realise, but sorry, I can't show you it in operation because I've got all these sort of messages on here. But where you type in your message, you have that little paper clip. If you hit that, it comes up with an option for location. So you can send your location as well. So, you could kind of type in help, ambulance, send your location sort of thing, and send that to 112. So there's a few different reasons why you might want to have communication on your Camino, how people generally do it. They're using their cell phone from home, generally getting a local SIM card or eSIM, and some of the purposes that generally people use phones for while they're on Camino. So, contacting other pilgrims, accommodation, and on a more serious note, in case of emergency, which I think it's kind of sensible to have a phone for those sort of reasons. So there we go. If you have any other tips on Camino Communications or indeed any other questions, do comment down below. I look forward to hearing from you. But thanks for watching, and bye for now.